We get live right now, man. It's going down. Excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
Hello and welcome to episode 177 of Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast presented by us, the staff of Brew Hoop. My name is Riley Feldman, one of your usual co-hosts, back from paradise, back from a world where I wasn't paying attention to the Milwaukee Bucks, which is not necessarily intertwined. I'm just stating facts right now. Thanks to Kyle, Adam, and former co-boss Mitchell for standing in my stead last week to cover the team while I was away. Good to be back, though. Kyle is away because as soon as I came back, Kyle decided to jut off to the far north of Toronto. We will get a report from him when he's back next week, but I'm joined this week, as per usual, by Adam. And Jackson's making yet another podcast appearance. Jackson's becoming one of the regulars now. Welcome back, Jackson. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well. It's great to be back. I think this is twice in 2 week span, which I think even before that was like twice all season. So happy to be back. Excited to get back in the swing of things a little bit, seeing how the Bucks are doing, and excited to be just getting things back rolling.
Cool. Adam?
I'm doing all right. You know, I was trying to think if there's anything momentous in my life. Basically, every day is just like a wash in whatever is happening with my daughter. Then, like, so today, like, we go to the grocery store, and I was sort of coerced into purchasing ice cream, which she ate in the cart. So that's like kind of what every day is like for me. But I want to hear how Belize was, at least the Cliff Notes version, Riley.
So it was gorgeous, but and longtime listeners will know, this is very ironic. We get there, we do the 12 hours of fly from Minneapolis to Miami, from Miami to Belize City. You take a taxi to the port, you take a water taxi to the island, you take a golf cart taxi to the place you're going to stay. 12 hours, totally fine, no big deal. I send a picture of the room we're in to my mom because she was watching my dog. So it's just a little, hey, check out where we're at. Put the phone down, and I immediately slam my foot against the bedpost without any shoe on or anything. So I immediately sprained the ever-loving hell out of my ring toe, literally 5 minutes after showing up at the hotel. So it bruised really good. It swole up quite a bit. But because I was able to throw on sandals, it only kind of held me back a little bit. We were able to do a lot of time in the sun, on the sand, and the water was perfect. Temperature was like high 85 every day with like sun, but a little bit of cloud cover. And it was just really interesting. It's a part of the world I'd never been to before. It's kind of like an easy access point because English is the main language in Belize. So you kind of get a taste of Central America, but if you're somebody who's not comfortable with Spanish, you get that. There's like touristy parts, but there's also a lot of like quote unquote authentic Belize, I guess. It's maybe not so much like cruise ports where like if you do your day excursion, like the 5 blocks next to where all the cruise people come off is like really built up. It's pretty, you know, what I would say is like a authentic tourist spot. It's very popular with backpackers. So great time, great weather. My toe still hurts a little bit, but I went to the doctor and he said, it's not broken. You're just a big baby, which I knew already. And we're hoping to continue the healing process. And even if it never really heals, if this is a forever injury, I guess I'll always have that to remember Belize by. So it was a good trip, and I'm glad to be back. Although I will miss the great weather that we had there.
How would you say your toe is doing in sort of relation to like what Chris's ankle is at? Like, are you getting too?
It's getting close. We're getting close. It's
is stupid close. Is that right?
Yeah, it's getting stupid close. Like if it was a playoff game right now, like it would be able to play. The toe would be able to play, but because we're just giving it the time, to rest up and heal. So yeah, maybe that is what it is. Maybe like in some sort of fate way, I'm just waiting for Chris to return, and then I'll wake up. I'll know before the reporters know, before Chris even knows, because I'll wake up and I'll be free in my toe. And I know Chris is coming back today. So
your toe is, what is that? Like a totem? Your toe is the totem.
Totem.
Yeah, totem.
Yeah. To Chris's ankle.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's you don't need Shams or Woj anymore because you just need my toes reporting. If specifically you're looking for Chris Middleton updates, which he's not coming back tomorrow. We're recording, so we don't want to have a prelude to that. We're recording on Wednesday after the Kings beat down at the hand of the Kings yesterday. We already found out Chris is not going to play against the Sixers. We'll see if he plays on Sunday against the Suns, I should say. I'll just run through the scores. Very funny. These guys get together a week ago. It's feeling good. 5 in a row. The team goes on and wins a 6 in a row without Giannis. They beat the Clippers at home, 113-106. The vibes are great. Pat Beverly's hashtag belt to ass is in full effect. We're talking a big game. All these teams, all these media haters didn't see this coming. Then they go on the road. They lose to the Golden State Warriors 90-125, which, the Warriors are good. A lot of ball movement. They're good 3-point shooters. It happens. It happens. Okay. You go to Los Angeles. You lose that one 122-123. LeBron James sits for that one. D'Angelo Russell scores 44 points. I have his notes for that game. LOL. He scores 21 points in the fourth quarter. And then Damian Lillard gets blocked by why can't I remember his name right now off the top of my head?
Spencer Dinwiddie.
Spencer Dinwiddie. Thank you. I was thinking of Spencer Dinwiddie. So lose that one in heartbreaking fashion. Things are kind of feeling a little iffy. You blow another lead. D'Angelo Russell kills you. Not great. Then they get the win 124-117 over the Clippers. Without Paul George, without Kawhi Leonard, but with James Harden. Okay, get back on track. And then they go up to Northern California and then they get their asses kicked yet again, 94-129 at the hand of the Sacramento Kings. So high note on the last podcast. This one's going to be probably a little bit more subdued because we're nothing if not completely reactionary on this podcast. At least I am. I will start with you. Actually, we'll start with you, Jackson, because I want to go Jackson, then Adam. I know he's going to bring us up, and then I'm going to try and bring us back down. So we'll start with you, Jackson. What did you learn about the Milwaukee Bucks in the past week and a half or so?
That I think the biggest thing, and it's been this way all season long, and it's going to be even more magnified with Doc Rivers as coach. They not only need to beat good teams on the road, but they need to close out good teams on the road because, well, yes, the Lakers are somewhere in the play-in. They've been playing a lot better recently. D'Angelo Russell is somewhat finally living up to his lofty expectations when the Lakers first drafted him, and he's been playing really well. The Clippers are still playing really well. The Kings are obviously a top 5, 6-ish team in the West. And then obviously Golden State still fighting for a play-in spot, but they have championship pedigree. You got to be able to finish and be consistent because honestly, if you look at just the schedule, the 5 wins beforehand, outside of Minnesota in the last game against the Clippers, it's nobody. It's Philly with no Embiid, Charlotte twice, and Chicago. It's very, very fraud watch-esque right now. And yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that moving forward. And then I think, what was the other thing I wrote down here? Just work still needs to be done. Obviously things have gotten a little bit better under Doc Rivers, but there's still a heck of a lot more work to do to get to where the Bucks want to be. And I'm going to be interested. For those who don't know, I'm going to be there for the game next Thursday against Brooklyn and next Sunday against OKC. So I'm going to be interested to see if I hear another damn quote about we need to be held more accountable. Everyone needs to be better. I swear to God, if I hear that at the end of March, I'm going to be pissed.
As you should be. I think it's interesting, the road record. I was actually thinking the same thing, Jackson, because one of the overriding themes through the Doc Rivers tenure so far was like, man, we really suck on the road, which is true because we had a really tough road like stretch to start. We had another tough road stretch here. Prior to the Sacramento Kings game, I went and I crunched the numbers. I don't want to make it sound like I did a lot of research. I literally did like 3 searches on NBA.com/stats, but I looked, and the team on the road so far this year, now they're a flat 17-17. They were 17-16 on Monday. The offense was like a 117.2 offensive rating. The defense was like a 116 something. So the net was like plus 0.8. So not a lot. I mean, you're just barely breaking even. But when I looked at that, I said, okay, like 500, that's not that bad. And then I went and I looked at the past 5 champions to see what were their regular season road records, because it doesn't predict everything. Usually teams that win the title are higher seeds. They play a lot of home games in the playoffs, everything like that. But I figured it didn't hurt. Actually, the Nuggets had they were 19-22 on the road last year with a negative. It was not a good net rating, whatever it was. I can't quite remember, but it was a negative net rating. The Warriors were a little bit above 500 the year prior to that. They broke, I think it was like plus 1.2 net rating. And then it goes from there. I think it was in no particular order, Lakers, us, and the Raptors, all like 3 or 4 or 5 games above 500 with pretty good, like plus 4 net ratings across the board. So, the things that jumped out was the fact that the offense has been really good, continues to stick even on the road, less so these past 5 games or so, but over the course of the season. And that, yes, you do have to beat the good teams on the road, but the team is not so far off the historical pace. I believe there's 6 or 7 road games left, maybe not even that many, where if they put together a couple of good performances, they'll still be in line with previous champions. But something fair to be concerned about, especially if they, have to go on the road against some good teams in the playoffs. But just wanted to kind of note that as well. I was in the same track, but maybe not as far off. But the defense does continue to suck regardless of if they're at home or away. So,
yeah, the more of the concern was just like obviously as of recent getting blown out by 20 and 30 plus against Golden State in Sacramento. Like that Lakers loss, yes, without LeBron, it's competitive. I can take it. You're going to lose games on the road because it's just more difficult to win on the road. But like, don't get like slapped out of the arena, out of the building if you're going to lose on the road. At least make it close.
I was looking back. I mean, I think I might have literally said this thing last week that I don't particularly, or the week before, that I don't particularly care where the Bucks wind up seeding wise. But I mean, the reality is if you look at their playoff run when they won the championship, they were 10-1 at home. So theoretically, it's much better to have as many home games as possible, and the team's going to be better at home. And they were 6-6 on the road in the playoffs. So I think that's important. I think if you're looking at this last small sample of games, right, like it's not good to be blown out. It's always very dispiriting as a fan, especially in the regular season, to see this stuff happen. But I do think just looking at those particular matchups, like the ones where they really got destroyed, Golden State and Sacramento, and trying to think about how that might apply to who they could be facing in the playoffs potentially. Like I think the closest analog for how those 2 particular teams seem to function is probably Indiana. So you can see them playing so quickly, and that's clearly why the Bucks had a lot of trouble with that. I mean, the amount of just like pretty simple DHO stuff that Sabonis was running on top of the arc, and watching Jay Crowder look like he was going to just blow chunks trying to chase Kevin Huerter around screens. I mean, like that's the kind of stuff that I think for a veteran team on the end of a road trip, I'm not that surprised that the Sacramento Kings like just completely pummeled them at home. At the same time, I don't think it excuses the team for playing atrociously outside of Giannis. The tough thing was I was watching that Kings game because I couldn't stay up for it, so I watched it earlier today. I mean, seeing how many open shots Beasley missed, right? Like these are interesting, just like bellwethers for, like Jackson was talking about, on the road. This is stuff that's going to come up. Beasley may hit those shots at home in Fiserv Forum, but on the road, you can't necessarily afford to have one of your role players who's clearly going to get minutes shoot that poorly on the road. So I think getting those kind of reps, I think that's kind of what I took from some of the struggles on the road, is just seeing, okay, this I'm not going to read too much into it, but this could be a little bit of a peak of the struggles that happen in the playoffs when your role players struggle a bit more when they're away from the friendly confines of home.
Especially with the defense kind of falling back to earth a little bit these past 5 games in particular. Much has been made, me included, I think a lot of people, of the overall improvement, rising from 20th, like 21st, 20th under Griffin to excuse me, under the 20 games of Rivers, and then under the Prunty, the short little gap for Prunty, we've risen up to like 16th, 17th, 16th, which isn't massive, but you say 16th, like almost league average, you might be able to squeeze by if your offense is really, really good. But while the offensive rating still looks great on paper, I think what you said, Adam, like there's too many. If the Dame Giannis combo, which they're trying to force a lot more now, but if like Dame has an off shooting night, or Beasley, who is like the one, Beasley or Bobby, who are like your 2 role players who get the green light to shoot a lot, if one of those guys don't hit, I mean, there is no fallback option on the defensive end. Not really. Like, unless we're going to pull out some sort of new, maybe it's just an effort thing. Like Jackson said, people are held accountable. They buy into that, but that's what's tricky about it, is the fact that the defense is too bad or too inconsistently bad that you can't like really afford an off night from any of the role guys. You can afford like maybe a slight off night if Dame and Giannis step up to it, but given the way that our shots are distributed, which are essentially those 2 guys plus maybe Malik, if one of those guys is really missing a lot of the shots, it's nothing to fall back on, and especially if the other team even has a moderately okay start, you're digging a hole right off the bat. So I think it's all fair concerns, and I think there's a lot about this 5 game stretches of crystallized. I mean, it's tough, like a 35 point loss. It's such an outlier that it's like, what can you really take from that? I think obviously a red flag, but is it like, how deep is the analysis, I guess? But I think it brought us back to earth after the 6 game winning streak. So all right, Adam, how about after talking a little negative, I know you said you have something positive for us, so let's lift us back up.
Okay, I'll try my best, because my thing was going to be positive. Then when I looked at the numbers a little closer, it might be a little. I hate it when that happens. Yeah, but that's
okay. Those damn numbers.
So I think, the thing about this team, we were talking about this before we recorded. I mean, this has been about as wonky as a Bucks regular season, or honestly, even just if you think of a neutral NBA team, you just go, this is like what an average regular season looks like. I would say this is on the far end of the bell curve or whatever for being super turbulent and rough. So at the end of the day, right, like they flashed up that graphic, and I think we've all seen this before, right? That graphic, I think it was during the Kings game or the one game before, of when Dame scores 25 or more, they've only lost like 4 games. When he scores 30 plus, they've maybe lost 1 game. 40 plus, obviously they're undefeated. Which
I think that's the JS Online Castaway 2.0 statistic of, I believe he tracks it in every single game. So
that's great.
We have to give credit where credit is due. They are tracking the exact same statistic. So if anybody lays claim to that, just so you know.
That's perfect. And he deserves a lot of credit. He's awesome. So the thing about that is, and I mean, I don't want to be too reductive, but I think for this team, sometimes it might just going to be coming down to that. And so I was like, okay, well, how is that going to shake out in the playoffs? So I started looking at Dame's playoff numbers, because I think he's been good. And I'm not trying to rag on Dame or whatever, right? I'm not trying to be negative in this segment. I'm trying to be positive and uplifting. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, I probably could have had a better understanding of his scoring ups and downs by looking at some of his playoff scores. So I was looking at and this is the other thing. He also hasn't been in the playoffs since 2021. So let's look at his last 2021 series. This is against Denver. They didn't have Jamal Murray. They lost this series 2-4. Okay. These are the points that he scored in that game: 34, 42, 37, 10, 55, 28. So pretty good. That's not bad. But then let's go to the year prior. This is 2020. They lose one game to 4 against the LA Lakers. Dame scores 34, 18, 34, 11, and then he's inactive for the last one. So I think he got hurt in that game. In their long run, again, I know these are a lot of numbers, but in their long run, when they made the Western Conference Finals, okay, this is from the the first series of that one, he goes 30, 29, 32, 24, 50. So that series, they win 4-1. And clearly you can see why he's scoring consistently the whole time. Next series, they beat Denver in 7 games. He goes 39, 14, 28, 28, 22, 32, 13 in game 7. Next series against Golden State, they lose 0 games to 4. He scores 19, 23, 19, 28. So this is my long-winded way of getting to the point of, I think this team's going to clearly go as Dame goes in the postseason. Chris, I'm not sure what's going to be going on with him, but I do think I'm not expecting this team to run train over anyone in the playoffs. And I think we're going to be seeing probably similar stuff to what we've been seeing in the past with Dame, where it's like, if he's not putting up the numbers, we might not be winning some of these games. So I don't know if that's negative. Maybe it's neutral, but I think I was just a little surprised to see the volatility a little bit, even in the playoffs, because I was expecting a little bit more of like, okay, his minutes ramp up. He's probably going to be able to hopefully like kind of bring it in the playoffs. But I think there's that volatility that's baked in a little bit to this regular season. I think will still be there in the playoffs. So I'm kind of trying to level set myself for that come the postseason.
I just while you were running through all that, I couldn't help but just go back to look at Drew Holiday's numbers, because that's all I can do is really, unfortunately, at Drew's expense, look at that to like make myself feel a little bit better. So obviously the raw scoring numbers for Dame pretty much completely surpass Drew across the board. True shooting percentage, though, interestingly, career in the playoffs, Dame's true shooting percentage 56%, which is like, it's pretty good. He actually in that 2020-2021 playoffs, true shooting percent of 66%. Year before that, 61.8, and then 56% on that really long run you just went through. Drew was able to bust out for us 48.2, 46.1, 49.1. So, there is still a drop, but like, I think that just combines, like, you're completely right, Adam. The way this team goes, I'm at this point where it's like, Chris who? If Chris is alive, that's great. That's what I'm saying right now, which is it's a very familiar place for us to be at this time of year. So if Chris is alive, that's awesome. We're going to go as far as Dave goes, especially because he is such a defensive sieve, even if he has moments where he looks okay. So on the numbers, you have some encouragement he has had like a better offensive season than Drew ever had. Like, there's just no denying that. But the problem is, I think Dame isn't as decisive or as I don't want to say creative. As impactful of a playmaker for others as I would have guessed going into the season, partially because, to be frank, I did not watch a lot of Portland Trailblazers ball because I'm not staying up until 9 p.m. at the earliest my time to watch it. And in the playoffs, a lot of these teams, they go to their star who's going to score a lot. So it is what it is. But in his situation, if he's not hitting shots, I don't say, oh, it's okay, because Dame can also, through his gravity, create a lot for others. Like, he can create a little bit, but it's not like to such a point that it overcomes if he's having a bad shooting night and he's not bringing it defensively. So I think that ties back into what we were just talking about, as well as like you do not have much to fall back on. Like, in an ideal world, everything hits, it looks great, everything goes great. He shoots like to those higher, like, 60 plus true shooting percentage, and you're like, okay, we're in a pretty good spot. If that doesn't happen, then again, there's not a fallback option. So I think that's a good point. And again, there's a lot about Damian Lillard that I'm finding out that I never really bothered to look, besides like he scores a lot. So turns out that's true, but there are some caveats beneath that as well.
So you're telling me that in March of an NBA season with the Bucks heading into the playoffs, we don't know if Chris is going to be healthy. The point guard is up and down offensively, and we're praying and hoping Giannis can score. I don't think I've ever heard of that before. Maybe I think this is a new phenomenon.
At least 50% of the fan base thinks the coach is an absolute idiot who has no right at all being anywhere near NBA basketball. Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same around here.
Yeah, and I think regardless of what happens in the postseason, just keep thinking about where like this Bucks bench is at. Like, not that they need like this like to the same degree, they need like their own Lou Williams. They need just someone who can actually like create offense off the bench. Because like even when I think of like when Chris is back, you have 3-and-D with Patrick Beverly, 3-and-D with Jay Crowder, a little bit of catch and shoot with Bobby, and that's pretty much it. You're not getting really anything from Marshawn. AJ Green, when he does play, is catch and shoot, and Ajax doesn't do anything except jump high, which is cool, but like there's nothing really that, and that's going to be a concern heading into playoffs is what are you going to get for the bench? Because I don't think Chris is at a point anymore where he can play 40 plus minutes in a playoff game, especially with just the mileage on his body the last 3 years.
That ties in to mine, so I'm just going to jump into it because I have as my point, excuse me, Brooke the sandbagger. But really, this is a wider point about the big man rotation in general sucking really, really bad, like worse than it has in a very long time. And many of the previous years, because Brooke was such a good anchor and Bobby, for all his faults, was at least like you could squint and think it was going to happen. So to your point, Jackson, you need who's going to be your sixth man, who's going to be your shooter off the bench. In our team, it's 6'10" Bobby Portis, who, because he's a big man, is supposed to be like a net plus on defense and is quite obviously not a net plus. I think he got roasted alive in the Lakers game, unfortunately for him, which is a preview of what will happen against any team that has a clue in the playoffs. That's always been the fear with Bobby. That's nothing new, but like unless, and I don't even fault Doc Rivers or Adrian Griffin before him or whoever, like the number of times this season I've thought about, let's put Malik on the bench. It's like, well, but Malik would just do the same thing that Bob. So like then Bobby becomes redundant, or you have them both out there, which is like an absolute worst case scenario. And it's like, okay, if Bobby is your plug and play like shooter guy, he's too streaky to be like really consistent. And guards, you can hide a little bit with a good defense, but a big like Bobby, you cannot. So we're already hamstrung there. Gallinari, do I need to say anything? What needs to be said about Danilo Gallinari? I mean,
I like some of his passing. This is my only take about it. He's making 3 or 4 passes that have brought me joy, and that's I like to thank him for that.
So Adam is squinting his eyes, and he's just seeing like Joe Ingles out there
seeing
again.
Fades of Joe Ingles. Yeah, I know. God, I miss him.
Adam sits on the other side of the room and takes his glasses off and just pretends that Joe Ingles is back. It's fine. Like, like a passing big is fine. I think he's, again, that's just he will get minutes in the playoffs, which will be hilarious. But outside of that, he's doing like the worst Chris Middleton impression, like some of the passing. And that's all I can really say about Gallinari. So, okay, he's one of our bigs. He's not good. Jay Crowder has essentially turned invisible again. Jackson said he brings 3-and-D. I'm not sure about that on either of those points right now, which is okay. He shouldn't be starting. I mean, he's getting into a starting role, but still not encouraging. And then let's get to Brooke Lopez. Not because I want to really dump on Brooke, but this past week was not his finest. I think we are back to a point now where it's becoming hard to determine, is it Brooke being asked to do way too much because the perimeter defense of Malik and Dame has gotten so bad again that he's just having to guard a ton of guys? Or is he sandbagging, like he's just kind of dialing it back? Or is his foot speed like really, his reaction speed and foot speed kind of dropping a little bit? Just because there were numerous times in a couple of the games where in the zone drop, like he has the right presence, he kind of does the right, like has the right moves, kind of chooses the right assignment. And then when the reaction time comes, either on the first action or even if it's like a rebound or like a reset or whatever, it's just the reaction speed isn't there and teams are really killing. Like the points in the paint differential has gotten out of hand yet again. In the Clippers, I think we were down at a certain point by like 30 points in the paint, ended up being like 20 points. So a little bit more respectable, but still like, given the size on our team, you wouldn't expect that the way that we're supposed to play defensively. So the issues with the defense partially rooted to the fact that Brooke is older. I'm not saying he's completely lost it, but he is older. He probably is a little bit slower overall. And given the way we've talked over the years of how spot on he has to play his zone drop to make everything really function, that's a huge problem. He's the Giannis is obviously everything that drives. He drives everything. Without Giannis, this franchise doesn't even exist. Sneakily, though, Brook Lopez is the linchpin that has held this sucker together for years and years now. Like, there's a reason we've never moved him on. There's a reason we paid him $50 million and then signed his brother to come back as well, because we know structurally, if we don't have Brook, it's over. Like, there is no other option here. So I'm just a little bit concerned about how things have looked defensively around him the past week or so. Maybe it's a blip. He's got a newborn at home. He's a traveling NBA star. Like, there's a million things going on. So I don't want to bury the guy, but I'm just really disappointed with the big man rotation. And maybe that just means we go with Giannis at center a whole hell of a lot in the playoffs. But we don't experiment with that much now. So I'm not sure how comfortable the team's going to be doing that. So if you guys have thoughts on big men, Brooke, Bobby, Nilo, Jay, whomever, please let her rip. Go for it.
I think he kind of hit the nail on the head for everything. I just think outside of a proper sixth man guard, I think like figuring out who I would even say the long-term center is going to be the most important thing heading into the offseason, regardless of what happens, because Brooks going to be 36/37 at that point, and Bobby's not getting any younger. You don't have a third string center. You're basically saying Gallo's your third string center for this season. And then obviously not a lot of draft capital to bring in young talent, not a lot of money to spend. So center is going to be, if they can find someone who can do something what Brooke does, but maybe like 3 or 4 years younger, that's great. But now a lot of Brook Lopez's grow on trees. Pardon the Stanford pun, but
it's pretty good. That's pretty good. Pretty good.
But yeah, that's going to be, and so playoffs and future of the team and future of the Giannis Dame experiment is going to be who the hell's the next center after Brook Lopez.
This is where I can actually be positive. I have nothing bad to say about Brook Lopez. The man is slightly older. The numbers are not as good. So the Bucks are like 12th in terms of percentage of field goal percentage at the rim. I think they're at like 65% versus they were always like near the top 3. And you can see Cleveland's around like number 2. And that's kind of where it was always kind of my bellwether. Surprisingly, Oklahoma City is number 1, which is I was very surprised by to see that. I think, yes, Brook is old. Yes, I agree. I think he looks a little step slow, and I think these games were absolutely terrible for him. So I was looking at these rim numbers for the last 4 games. Okay, so Golden State at the rim shot 16 of 17. The Lakers shot 15 of 18.
Oh.
The Clippers 17 of 27. Huh? That's not bad. And then this one floored
pretty
me.
Good.
The Kings were 6 of 6. They only took 6 shots at the rim. That's absolutely insane. That's so crazy, right? So those were really bad, and I think these were bad performances by Brook. But my saving grace for this is they're not going to win a championship unless Brook Lopez is on the floor for a significant number of each game. I think if you look at I'm looking at the top 4 lineups for the Bucks in terms of possessions this year. They all have Brook Lopez in them. And they're all like plus the lowest one is plus 14.1. And that's Damian, Beasley, Connaughton, Portis, and Lopez. So, and that particular lineup is better than that same lineup, but with Giannis in place of Brook. So this is my big question. And is Giannis and Portis going to be able to coexist on the floor in the playoffs together? Because we haven't seen too much of it. I'm looking at this lineup here. It has 100 possessions played, which is too small for me to feel comfortable with what this number is. But it had Clean the Glass has them at plus 33.7 differential, so that's very good, right? And this is without looking at the underlying numbers. So I don't just necessarily trust that, right? but we just haven't seen Giannis at center like at all this year. We've seen like none of those lineups ever go out there. I'm a firm believer that I think those are going to have to work for them to make the playoff run possible. But I'm thinking more and more that we might be seeing much more of Giannis with Bobby, and we'll just have to survive and pray to God that they score enough. Because I just don't trust Doc that much to go to the Giannis at center lineups. But I mean, maybe he's sandbagging, maybe he's saving that stuff and just doing it all in practice. But I'm dubious.
There's literally nothing better than the 3-headed hydra of Giannis, Bobby, and Danilo out there, just absolutely blitzing teams to death. That should be the most worrying thing we see. Some of the lineups Doc has thrown. I don't remember which line. I think it was Pat, Bobby. I don't remember who the other two guys were, but it was like in one previous game, they were like a -40 net rating on the court, and then Doc just ran it out there again. So you do have to kind of worry a little bit about the combos. Like, is Doc just going to Bobby being the center or whatever? So, but very funny that those three get a lot of run together.
Yeah, that combination with basically every team in the East they would have to go up against at some point is hell in my brain, because you have to deal with Boston and Porzingis, the two-headed monster in Cleveland with Mobley and Allen, and then you have Randall and with the Knicks. You got Banchero and Wendell Carter with the Magic. You got Miles Turner with the Pacers. You got potentially Embiid if he's back with the Sixers. You got Bam with the Heat. And then even if you want to say Vucevic and Drummond with the Bulls, if that ever became a thing, like, I guess Vucevic has been awful, but like,
he won't be in the playoffs against the Bucks. I can guarantee you that. He'll be sinking so many 3-pointers in game 1.
He will.
And then whatever, like even like a Clint Capella with the Hawks. Like, there's still basically every team they could go up against has some at least quality center, or at least 2 decent ones that if you're throwing out Bobby and Giannis out there together, like I would say some of those you could probably get by. But closer to the top of the conference, that does not make me happy.
So I think the one thing, as one counter, I think to that is, I think if you're, geez, I almost said Bud. If you're Doc,
Freudian.
if you're Doc, you need to hope when you throw those lineups out there that they're just going to blitz teams to the point where the other team has to make the adjustment, right? Where they're like, yeah, we can't keep this center on the floor anymore. We have to go small against these guys. So I think that's could be the one possible thing, because you want to be able to be dictating what's happening. And if those guys can score at an incredibly high level, plug Chris in for that in place of Connaughton or whatever. Like, I think that lineup does have the potential to just slaughter teams if they're able to. So that could be the one thing that keeps them playable.
And the other upside too is even though he doesn't flash it all that much in the regular season, Giannis is still a total monster defensively when he digs deep. Like a couple of the games this week, he was doing so much to cover for a lot of the guys on the perimeter, like to try and clean things up and keep it even semi-respectable. So if you have lineups where Giannis is the big or is the primary big, or even just in general, like he can hopefully level it up in the playoffs. It's stupid for us to essentially say the equivalent of flipping a switch, but I think that is the saving grace. Like, yes, I criticize the big lineup, but one, your starting power forward is like one of the greatest of all time on both ends of the floor. So you have that. Brooke is serviceable. I don't want to, again, I'm not completely bagging on the guy. It's a total lost cause, but like that's a good serviceable. Then you only need just a few minutes from somebody who will not completely kill you. And if Bobby hits shots, like you talk about bellwether, yes, Dame is a total bellwether offensively. Bobby hitting like even a couple of shots is like a massive boost. That's what Jackson was saying. Like, you get anything off the bench, Bobby's going to be what gets you off the bench. If he hits a couple of shots, we're all going to sit here like, man, John Horst and Doc Rivers are geniuses for not having kicked Bobby to the curb in January. So, it's not a lost cause, but this has just been a really dispiriting couple of week and a half or so for especially the bench bigs. It was like, man, and we continue to run Danilo Gallinari, which is not encouraging, but It is what it is. So, all right. Any final thoughts on the week and a half that was? Any last things learned at all?
Just because I feel like I should say this every show. This Giannis season is awesome. He was awesome again this week, even in games where the whole team sucked. He was awesome. Just such a delight to watch him this year. I don't know if we'll get another season this good, but I'm enjoying it every chance I get.
I liked the very funny the preseason, like, oh, is Dame gonna steal a little MVP buzz from Giannis? Is like, no, that is not going to happen. Yeah, Giannis has rocked. He is the saving grace to everything, and a large reason why I can still somewhat hold my hopes that we could contend for a title, because he's been that great on both sides, and he's always proved it in the playoffs, or largely he usually brings it in the playoffs. So, okay. Didn't have any Buck the host from the people, but given that I think we're 4.5 weeks away from the first round of the playoffs kicking off, not very far at all. I wanted to get a little temperature take. We've seen a lot of the team are getting in the 60s in terms of games played now. I wanted to ask you guys, and this is kind of a poorly worded question, but I'll be curious what your answers are. But having seen the team, having seen the league play out, I would ask you to fill in this blank. In order to win the 2024 NBA title, the Bucks must blank. Either whether that be a positive thing, a specific player, something like, what's a key thing, something you've sussed out about the team that you think is the critical deciding factor right now to the team, either getting the possibility of gold or like falling short of the task?
My answer is obvious and not very insightful. So hopefully this will buy both of you enough time to come up with something better. My answer would be stay healthy. I think it's really, this is something else I've been trying to tell myself as Mr. Positive on this podcast today. I mean, the last two seasons, right? The playoff series against Boston got totally derailed by the fact that Chris was hurt, and they took it to 7 games. Who knows what would have happened? I mean, I don't want to play what ifs. I think that team played on a razor's edge, and they were lucky to get to 7 games against Boston, but still, they did, and the team wasn't healthy. Last year, Giannis' back must have just been absolutely in tatters. Like, and I have no clue how he even played those games. And Jimmy Butler was superhuman for those games. So we haven't seen the Bucks stay healthy for a full playoff run. And in their playoff run, they won a championship. Other teams were the ones getting hurt. So that probably will happen again if they were to make a championship run and they're lucky enough to stay healthy. One other team might be the one that gets the bad luck this year. So I'm going to go with stay healthy.
Yeah, and even then, they still didn't have Giannis for a game or two in that Eastern Conference Finals against Atlanta, and they're still able to squeak it. So you need the right matchup too. That also is going to be a big part into it. For me, I think it's probably this. The biggest thing is for Doc to beat his reputation post Celtics. Not finding the most creative and soul-crushing ways to lose winnable playoff games and winnable playoff series. Like, there are times where, like, if you look, there's like, oh, there was a big injury, because I'm thinking back to when Chris Paul hit that game-winning shot against the Spurs. I think that was 2014. Didn't like Blake Griffin get hurt trying to do a tip dunk, and they ended up losing in the next round or something like that. Stuff like that, that's going to happen. I'm not going to place that all on Doc, but God, his last playoff run in Philadelphia is just, if that's what's going to happen, then Doc Rivers should never be an NBA head coach again. You have a 3-2 lead on Boston in your building. You have 2 of the best players in the NBA, one a big, one a guard, and you absolutely blow it in back-to-back games in close fashion in Game 6 and blowout fashion in Game 7. Like, that's like against your arch rival. Imagine like this happens against like the Pacers or the Celtics for the Bucks in the playoffs. And so that's the big thing. Doc needs to go see a voodoo specialist, go to a psychic. I don't know what, but just get the monkey off his back of finding the best ways to choke playoff games.
I think that's a really good point. I think mine would probably also be on Doc, interestingly enough, and that is like adjust fast. This is not a team that can just stick with something that's a losing bet and hope you're going to work your way out. Adjust quickly. If that means it's immediately pouring 42 minutes on your on your starters to kind of get your way through. Hey man, I ain't gonna live forever, and neither of these guys. Let's go. You know, if that means, and I think I'm very, 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 very curious about the Malik Beasley, what that's going to be, because he continues to feel like one of the the obvious starter that could get pulled in favor of like a Patrick Beverly. Like just be quick to adjust to whatever it is. Like don't overthink it, like you said, Jackson, but you can't. I was so sick and tired under Bud of like, all right, we're gonna give up like 2 games, then we're gonna make the adjustment. And if that one playoff run, it really worked out, and then the others there were extenuating circumstances. But there's a fine line between panicking and reacting in a way that is constructive for your team. And I'm hopeful, my hopeful spin on all the really, heavy vet bench minutes is we're getting a sense of what guys are capable of. And then hopefully that informs whatever decisions are made with the rotation in the future. Like promises to dudes, and it doesn't matter in the playoffs. Like, and this is, of course, I'm walking into the Doc Rivers trap because this is what people always say. Like he has his guys, he's just going to ride with his guys, and then good luck if they're not the guys. So I'm just hoping, much like Jackson, that Doc rises above it. I still think in my heart of hearts there is a winning formula on this team for a lot of different matchups. It's going to be really freaking hard to get there, but the pieces are there. Like it could all come together. It's not as a shoe-in as it has been in the previous years, but it's all there. So I would just say quick adjustments. Easier said for me, and my freaking office chair hundreds of miles away rather than being the guy on the sideline. But that would just be my thing. The pieces are there. You just got to find the right combination of it. That's right. That sounded hopeful from all 3 of us. I'm glad we were able to come up with, and they weren't outlandish either. I didn't just say, oh, Chris Middleton has to become an actual robot who can play all 48 minutes or something like that. So, okay, good. All right. That'll wrap up our Bucks talk this week. We're going to head on into the miscellaneous segments, a favorite of many of the sickos listening and watching at home here. We're going to jump right into rapid fire questions presented by me. We're going to start here. I'm sure we've asked this question before, but we've had enough roster turnover that it's worth asking yet again. Which current Buck on the roster would you most like to see take the spot as the color commentator post-career? Who do you think would be the best fit on the team now to do color commentary next to Lisa or whomever else is doing play-by-play?
With the condition that I would be the next play-by-play person, I'm bringing Patrick Beverly with me.
I think you're going to be paying a lot of fines to the the FCC. You're going to be paying a lot of fines, but it will be.
It'd be worth it. We get premium content out of that, and that's my knowledge of the game. He's a really smart guy, very colorful, which that works for the Bulls with Stacey King. Not maybe as boisterous as Patrick Beverly, but kind of in that same vein as a former player who had a lot of energy, but also really, really smart. And plus, it'd be nice to have 2 Chicago boys just chilling out and talking about basketball. So,
oh man, no one really jumps out. I mean, Joe Ingles.
I'm looking at the roster.
I would have preferred Joe Ingles a lot. That would have been great.
You have Italian Joe Ingles as your backup option. That's who you have.
I mean, I consider Pat Connaughton for a second because as color commentator, you wouldn't have to see him lick his lips all the time like he does in press conferences. I think you know what, this is the one. I actually think I might go with Brooke. I think Brooke has some decent stuff. I think he has some interesting things to say. I think he has sort of a literary. Brings that Stanford intelligence. He has a literary quality. He sort of was the He was the quarterback of the defense for all these years. I think he calls out a lot of those defensive assignments. I think he would have some interesting things to say on the color beat.
I boxed myself in here because I didn't look at the roster when I wrote this question to have an answer for myself. I would do Chris Middleton because, I want my play-by-play to get really hyped up, and Chris, he's so awkward. Look at how awkward Chris is. Maybe he'll clear the space when it's proper to let the play-by-play person get the work in. So he's been around the league a lot. Again, very intelligent. Like, I think he would have nice insights. I think Pat Bev is probably the best answer if he could tone down the cursing, just because you talk about stories for days. Like, what makes Marcus great is he has a gazillion stories about like being in Hollywood, playing basketball, all that. Pat Bev has his own, like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego style lifestyle. So Pat Bev probably is objectively the best answer, but I'll just do Chris because he'll clear the runway for the play-by-play person. All right, here we go. Second question. What's the, in your opinion, of the originals, the best Tootsie Pop flavor? And you could describe it by color of the wrapping if you don't know the actual flavor name.
Orange.
Red cherry. I think that's what it is.
I was going to say red cherry as well. Okay. Which of these two teams is your bigger nightmare round one matchup? The Miami Heat or the Indiana Pacers? For any number of reasons. Could be what do you think the results would be, the implications of losing to that team. Which of those two would be a bigger nightmare matchup in the first round?
I would say Miami, strictly for like the history of with them in the first round outside of the championship season, because it's been lost in the bubble in what was that, like 6 games, I think it was, and then ass whooping last year.
I think I would go Pacers because there's no upside to it. Everyone would think that we should win, and if we lose, it stinks. I kind of want the Heat because I want to take belt to ass to them, man, so bad. I don't even care. Like, if you're gonna win the championship, you got to beat the freaking Heat. Like, if you're gonna beat Boston or Denver, you should be able to beat the Heat. So show me that you can beat the freaking Heat.
Adam wants to take
Heat culture.
Yes.
Yeah, that's called an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Adam wants to take belt to ass worldwide, nationwide, coast to coast. Okay. I would say the Pacers just because how sour would I be if we lose to those punks? Come on. I
thought it couldn't get worse. I was like, I remember when we lost last year, I told myself, well, it'll never ever be this bad ever again for the rest of Giannis's run. And if they lose to the Pacers, to me that would be worse.
Yeah, especially with all the in-season drama of everything, it would be too much for me to take. So nightmare for me, Indiana, even though again I am confident that we would hopefully take care of business. Okay, final question. Inspired by the question asked by the snorkeling guide on our boat before we got in the water. No shame however you rate this, but how would you rate yourself as a swimmer on a scale of 1 to 10?
Say like a 4.5. Like, I think I can swim a little bit in the like Lake Michigan or something, but like I'm not like a super expert or anything. And like it took me a while to even like swim in the deep end of pools. Like, so yeah, I think I could get myself out of moderate danger, but like big danger, I need the Coast Guard.
It's a situation. Okay, good to know.
It's a problem.
Yeah, Jackson in deep water is a problem.
And not the way
I think we just came up with the episode title, so I'm gonna write that one down.
I think I'm probably just a little bit less. Like, I'm a 3, so I'm right around where Jax is. Like, I can kind of swim. Took me a long time to learn how to do it very well. I prefer to sort of cling to the walls of the pools down here, and I feel better there.
I would rate myself like a 7 or an 8. I've always enjoyed swimming. Not that I'm like a really like athletic swimmer, but I never am like uncomfortable or feel like out of place in water. I ask because we went to Belize with my best friend and his wife. And he had never done snorkeling before. So they were like, oh, well, how would you rate yourself? And he's like, oh, like an 8.5. Like, not that he was a super strong swimmer, but like, oh, he's pretty confident. And then they asked another guy who was also his first time. And the guy fucking said, oh, I'd rate myself like, I don't know, like a 9 out of 10. This dude Price's righted my best friend in front of the whole boat. He said, I'm a half rating better than that fucking guy, which I thought was so funny when he did that. So shout out to that guy who almost assuredly is not listening to the podcast, but if you are, you rock. So that's all I got for rapid fire this week. Okay. I don't have anything for Fountain Pens with Friends. Kyle's not here for a film review. That's okay, because Jackson is back with the next edition of Jackson's Build. I'm going to do this right. For those, if you're listening, I highly encourage, go to the YouTube page to watch this next segment, because Jackson is going to show us exactly what is in Jackson's Build this week. Go ahead, Jackson.
Okay, so I did do this a while ago, but I thought I would bring it up now. This is Boba Fett's Slave One, or as Disney likes to put it, Boba's Starship, because for whatever reasons. Yeah, this was a pretty fun one as well. I'm a Lego fanatic now. Like, for most of my life in childhood, I really wasn't, but like the last 6 months, it's been like, yes, I love Lego. Give me everything Lego. Yeah, there's like a couple of fun different parts. This little hatch here opens up. There's Boba Fett. It comes with the Mandalorian, which is always fun. Unfortunately, no Baby Yoda, so this immediately is a 0 out of 10. Would not recommend. But the other nice thing is that it also comes with this little compartment here. We can put little carbonite, like the pigs from Jabba's palace. Stick that right in there if I can get it. Yay. And then even right here, it has these two little blasters that you just fire off. I'm not going to do it now because I don't want to hurt my computer. But, but yeah, this is overall, even without Baby Yoda, I'd say this was probably about a 7. I wish it was bigger, a few more pieces. It does come with a stand, so it kind of looks nice when it displays. But overall, I give it a 7 out of 10 Lego bricks.
That's pretty good. Now, my question as a non-Lego ear, if somebody builds something like that and they really like the look, obviously got the stand, do people use a specific adhesive to if they really want it to hold together? Can you spray the final product down in it, or not really?
I don't think there probably is sprays that you can use. I don't use them because honestly, Lego sticks together pretty well. The only time you're going to have any issues is if you drop it, which in one of my other Lego sets that I did a while back, that happened several times. So not the one I showed last week, but there was another one that happened. But overall, they're pretty good. They stick together pretty well. There's not a situation where it'll just be sitting on a stand and a piece will fall off. You would have to physically just rip something off.
Okay, and I have one other question as a novice. What do you do, Jackson, when you have to move? What do you do with your sort of completed Lego creations?
Well, the nice thing as a college student is that I haven't had to move yet, and all these Lego sets have been done at home. In the future,
but in theory, when you have to.
In theory, I have actually kept all the boxes to my Lego sets that I've done. So obviously, not all of them are going to fit back in the box, but as much of them as I can, get them back in their original boxes, or at least deconstruct them to a point where I can just look back at the directions and put them together without having to spend 6 hours on rebuilding one set.
Okay. Thank you. I was curious about that. I'm impressed that you haven't had to worry about it. I moved for 10 years straight every single year. So that's constantly on my mind, is thinking how much junk I'm going to have to keep packing up.
It's super cool. I like the look of it. And I think I've mentioned this each time you do Jackson's Build. Go around on lego.com, folks. You will be probably not surprised because they are huge, but surprised at the number of things, not just stores. I mean, they have Hakusoi's Great Wave, the very iconic.
We got that for my mom.
Painting.
It's hanging up in our living room.
I bet it looks really cool. It looks awesome. And it looked like it was, just the way they frame it and everything. Look into it, folks. I have a Lego shop here at Mall of America. I stop in just to take a look around. I've yet to dive in, but You'd be surprised. And that's why we keep having Jackson back, because we know he's got the builds for us. And eventually we'll have the Hakusoi. This is my bid to get you to show me the Hakusoi.
I will.
Great way.
I will take a picture and I'll send it in the group chat later.
Beautiful. Okay, great. Final thing before we wrap up this week, predictions. We're coming to you midweek, which means there's only 2 games to predict until we presumably record again on Sunday. Back at home sweet home after that, yet again, tough road trip. We start tonight, if you're listening to this on Thursday, hosting the Sixers, again, without Joel Embiid, who sounds like he may be in also the purgatory like Chris. And then on Sunday, the Phoenix Suns come to town. It's a noon tip on ABC. I think Giannis has gotten rid of the no nap going to be an issue thing this season, so I'm not even worried about that. So with the 2 games on deck here, Adam, is belt to ass going 2-0? What are we thinking here?
Yeah, we need like a belt to ass or something for people here.
That's again another YouTube exclusive right there.
Yeah,
folks.
sorry about that.
I can't encourage you
listeners. I think 2-0. I think tomorrow before they play the Sixers, I might just text some of my friends from Philly and just say, "Hey, I haven't looked lately. How is Tobias Harris doing?" And just kind of see what see what happens. So I'm looking forward to that. Taking a little belt to ass to them. And obviously, we know Patrick Beverley loves to go off against teams he used to be on. No, the second one, like I said, go off against those teams, and I think they'll beat the Suns. So,
pause.
Yeah,
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think a 2-0 is necessary, and these are 2 very winnable games. Obviously, Philly with no Mr. Process, because the Process keeps getting injured. I think if you're able to handle how they handled Philly on the road out of the All-Star break, I think this is even easier because it's actually a home game. So who knows? But Phoenix, that's going to be a different beast. I'm not sure exactly where they're at injury-wise, at least with Bradley Beal. I'm assuming Booker and KD are still relatively healthy. Nurkic has been playing some quality ball as of recently. I think did he have like a 20 rebound game recently? Something like that. So I'm going to say 1-1 with a close loss to Phoenix on Sunday.
The return of Grayson Allen. Boos or cheers for Grayson Allen? That's my follow-up quick question. Yeah, yay or nay? What do you think was the reaction from the fans? Do you think he's going to get a tribute video? Probably not, right?
I mean, I think if they show the Alex Caruso foul, he'll get some cheers. But
yeah, okay, that's literally all they play. It's just that for like 30 seconds.
Every
like
time
all the different angles.
Every time he hit someone, every time he fouled someone. Honestly, if they just show his like game 3 and game 4 against Chicago in 2022, they'll be fine.
Yeah. I'm gonna say belt to ass also go as a perfect 2-0 this week. I'm hoping. Thank you again, Adam. I have to work on that. He'll show us after the podcast how to do that. I think, and here's my other prediction that's gonna absolutely be invalidated almost as soon as this podcast comes out. Chris makes his return this Sunday, and he's going to be like really mediocre, but we're going to say, hey, this guy's alive, and that's going to be something worth talking about on the next episode of Dear Diaries, which will come to you after that game against the Suns. We thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Adam and Jackson, for joining me tonight. We got everything over on the site, guys. Game coverage. Questions to Antlers is back with Jim Paschke, folks. I'm not joking around. Jim Paschke is there. He's going to be, you can go, it's pinned on the site. Go into the comments, throw your questions at Jim. Anything about all his years covering the Bucks. I'm sure everybody will have a ton of questions for the guy. We got Wednesday weekly wrap up. We got something on Thursdays, which I think are the results of the Tuesday tracker results on Friday, whole bunch of stuff. You got the podcast, you have the YouTube channel. As I say every single week on this podcast, if you want the Bucks content, we got the Bucks content. We thank you for listening, and we'll catch you again next week.